Okay, so my name is Arian Moore. I'm pursuing a multifunctional materials major here at Florida Poly, and my project is on in situ bioremediation of pollutants using bacteria-enriched materials. Okay, so for the introduction, as the world population continues to grow, rural areas shrink and the urban environment begins to dominate the landscape. In order to satisfy the demand for space for these new residents, architectural projects are constantly underway as new buildings and roads are erected on a daily basis. But with this progress comes some negative effects, as pollution worldwide is a persistent problem. And the graphic on the right just shows some sources of water pollution. A little hard to see, the writing's probably listed. Okay, so the objective of this project is to remedy water pollutants and air pollutants in the urban environment by implementing material solutions to provide treatment to water and air sources and prevent illness and other harmful environmental effects. So for the hypothesis, to utilize bioremediation bacteria for the enrichment of various materials in order to treat environmental pollutants. So, what is bioremediation in the first place? It is the use of either naturally occurring or deliberately introduced microorganisms or other forms of life to consume and break down environmental pollutants in order to clean up a polluted site. And on the graphic on the right, you can see a little diagram of how bioremediating bacteria work and function. And so basically you introduce a microorganism, bacteria in this case, into a site such as soil, water, sometimes air, but that's a little tricky for now. And when you introduce the microbes into this site, their job is to remove the pollutants from the site. Now there's various ways they do this. Sometimes they mechanically break them up, and other times they consume them themselves, and we'll go on into these different mechanisms later. And now for this obligatory slide, the relevance to biology. Pretty obvious, but I'll mention it anyways. The concept relies on utilization of living organisms. Organic compounds are subjects of some of the remediation, and results are beneficial to living conditions for other organisms. So the methodology for how this study is going to be underway. So first, we need to identify the most common pollutants found in groundwater, wastewater runoff, as well as air in urban areas. And so groundwater runoff, so basically through irrigation systems and storms, a lot of the pollutants in urban areas, they sort of get washed onto the road, washed into the sewer system, and if there's not proper drainage, if there's not proper systems to treat the water on the surface, sometimes with the pavement we have now, it can be washed into waterways and our water system, and it pollutes our drinking water as well as just freshwater and saltwater sources. And so the second step would be to procure the appropriate bacteria suited to combat the selected pollutants. And so there are different types of bioremediating bacteria. Some of them specify with oil. These are they're methanophobes, and some of them for mercury, for lead. Different bacteria specify in breaking up or consuming different pollutants. And so the third step is to choose a material, most likely asphalt or cement, just because I want to show how it could be feasible and helpful in an urban environment, and attempt to enrich with the bioremediation bacteria chosen. So the reason why this is an important step, because materials in the urban environment, that also presents another challenge. Because for some areas, the reason why the stormwater, groundwater runoff is so polluted is because the surfaces, they're not porous or permeable, and so all of the pollutants, they stay on the surface and they just get washed into the waterway, as opposed to infiltrating the soil or getting to the place where they can be treated. And so some areas, if there's not enough soil infiltration because the soils are too like clay based, then you have to sort of deal with having non-permeable surfaces. But there are places where you can use permeable asphalt, permeable cement for sidewalks and roads, and that this is where that could be most utilized, because you can implement bacteria into these materials, and then as the water sort of seeps through the asphalt or the cement, the bacteria inside can treat it and remove the pollutants. Now, testing the effectiveness of the material with a polluted sample. So once the material is enriched, whether it's a sort of a coat on the outside or it's implementing the bacteria actually in the material, you have to get a polluted sample to see the effectiveness of treating the pollutants. So now for feasibility and why this project could make sense. So, for some examples, the existence of bacterial concrete that heals itself when cracked by utilizing microbiologically induced calcite precipitation. Basically, bacteria inside this, is that my time? Okay. Bacteria inside this concrete, when there is a break in the concrete, there are little capsules with bacteria inside of them. When water hits these capsules, they awaken because they're lying dormant in the meantime. They awaken and they begin to precipitate something that is similar to cement. And so these cracks then fill up and then the concrete heals itself. And so what this is showing is that bacteria can live and survive inside concrete, undergoing any of the necessary chemical reactions that you have to do to be implemented in concrete. Second feasibility example is the use of bacteria to clean the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, EP oil spill that we're all familiar with. And so the bacteria in this case, they went in and some companies dumped a bunch of these bacteria on top of the oil spill. And they went in and they literally ate all the oil away. And that's how they get their energy. And so you don't need to, there's nothing you have to do to maintain them besides just give them the pollutant. They live, they get all their energy off of eating the oil. And they actually cleaned up a large amount of that. And so this is just showing that there is already, this isn't something that you have to engineer. There is already a bioremediating bacteria out there that's proven to work. And third one is microbes found on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch that have advanced the degradation process of plastics. And this is showing the range of bioremediating bacteria. So it's not just oil, it's not just these simple things that bacteria have had a long time to get used to. Plastic is a relatively new thing in terms of the history of the world. And so you can see how fast they've adapted to be able to consume this and use this as an energy source, and as well as for another aspect that I'll mention later. Okay, so the scope of this project in the short term, which is by the end of when I need to present per se, I'd like to accomplish the successful creation of a functioning and efficient bioremediation bacteria-enriched material, most likely asphalt or cement as I mentioned before, that clearly demonstrates a significant removal of pollutants, specifically water-based, with hope for air as well. Air at this time for bioremediating techniques is kind of difficult because the process that undergoes is called biofiltration, and that's slightly different, and the bacteria for there, they have to be more specialized. So that's something that would be nice, but not focus on that right now. And then after the first objective, I'd like to achieve funding for further research and discover new bioremediation bacteria, as well as engineering existing bacteria to function more efficiently and make the material subject to enrichment more sustainably produced. So, in the lab, scientists can create their own bioremediation bacteria based on, like, say you want the bacteria to thrive in certain environments where bacteria usually can't. You can take an extremophile bacteria, for instance, and then sort of genetically engineer it to be able to consume and break down the certain materials that you want it to, which normal bioremediation bacteria couldn't because they aren't adapted to that environment. And for the more sustainably produced materials, Biostone is a cement that it is produced at basically normal level temperatures, and it's produced using actual bacteria, the sort of the calcite process I mentioned earlier where the bacteria generates their own cement. That's a more sustainably way to produce it. There's not as much environmental impact, and there's not that heat option that could be dangerous if we're trying to implement bacteria. And the long-term goal is to see the implementation of these materials into appropriate environments to provide benefit to the world. Potential partners, that's just a bioremediation company example, and under it is the largest producer for asphalt in the nation. These are just examples. Most likely it would be the process that would kind of be patented or in use more than just selling a product. These are my citations, and now I can open for questions, I suppose.
All right, so questions? Questions? Oh, okay, there you go.
So there's been efforts already made in some regard. Have you ever worked on an asphalt crew or or have you ever poured concrete?
Have not, but since like high school, I have been working in I have been like theorizing about stuff in this area, and so I've always wanted to get into that, but I've never exactly been able to.
It's like this. I know asphalt courses. I didn't realize that there were already efforts underway to actually impregnate concrete with bacteria, but I know like it's a very hot process.
Yeah.
It pours cold, but it cures hot.
Yeah.
So
There's one species that in the genus Rhodococcus, I believe it is, that they've been using for, and it's been successful so far in living and actually staying alive in the process of cement creation and asphalt creation. So it's just finding the right bacteria and then sort of engineering it to do what you want.
Or like you said, maybe doing the whole after-cure process,
Yeah,
trying to impregnate it. You know, I think that may be,
a little bit easier. Right?
yeah.
How much moisture exactly is necessary to activate?
Well, for the moisture, that was the aspect for the cement that heals itself. Now that bacteria is specific in that case. I didn't actually get the numbers on that, but the good case for for removing pollutants, there are aerobic bacteria that can work for this, and anaerobic bacteria that can work for this. So you don't necessarily need moisture all the time to sustain the reactions necessary to remove the pollutants. So that's one benefit of this. The moisture is needed for the cement bacteria, but besides that, it's not necessary.
All right, so mine, again, it's probably more of a suggestion. You're covering a very broad scope at this point, I think, and I know it's one of the literature reviews, and kind of getting into where exactly on this would you want to focus on. Are you going to be focusing more on the asphalt? Are you going to be, because there's so much efforts on bioremediation right now, and we know that. I mean, you exhaust literatures will tell you there's so much of that already. And so I would suggest you focus on one specific, and whatever that is, it has some impact where? Locally, probably.
Yeah.
Here in Lakeland, is it going to be asphalt? Is it going to be cement? Whatever it is, I would go a nail on that one, and then now start narrowing down on, okay, what bacteria has been there already, like you have already cited some that really works on those particular type of pollutants, and then work on, okay, what contribution, what in your own thinking, what can I do on this? What can I contribute? The smallest thing that you can put in there. Especially in your field, again, make sure that there is a marriage between the biology and your field of engineering or computer or whatever it is at the end of the day, so that it's there is that usefulness in the two fields.
Mr. Wilson, if I can chime in, I was
Sure.
going to make a comment about the scope as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I heard you mentioned early on, you talked about lead and mercury,
Mm-hmm.
which would be a far different approach, I would think, than breaking down a long chain alkane, which is what you find in oil, or something along that line. So I think a little bit of focusing, a little bit more refinement in the scope, I think would be very, very useful.
Also, I'd like to add one area you might want to research too is in the area of aquaponics, using fish and bacteria in a symbiotic relationship to grow food, because there's a lot of heavy-duty bacteriological processing that goes along, pollutant processing that goes along in that process.
Yeah, and it's, I think that most recent kind of, they're promoting aquaponics a lot now because of, less water use and all of that kind of thing. So I think it's a good suggestion. You can also look into that and see, here's one approach, but what would be the effect in terms of bacterial remediation in there. And the thing that you have to, in the biologist aspect of that, with whatever form of bioremediation you take into consideration, you always have to make sure that when you have a bloom of your bacteria, when the bacteria overtakes, that it's not actually also, becoming a health hazard. That's one of the key things that you also have to do. So there's a lot that goes in there. And so once that Dr. Mady is saying, once you figure that out and you're more on this aspect, it's easier to now tease out, okay, which part should I really work in? All right, Arian, thank you.